Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's been happening since our last talk?
Well, kind of interesting. I mean, we spoke, and I had sort of, and I was doing going to go into a yoga class, and I walked up to the yoga class, and I was like, hold on a second, there's something is slightly different than what was last time I came outside the house,
Yeah.
and it was that, that thing of, the movements and the patterns and all of that sort of stuff
Yeah.
going on. And but I didn't feel the urge to sort of like get involved in it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I didn't feel, like, oh wow, look, this,
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
going on. Anyway, then I did the yoga class and I came out and
Mhm.
I guess it was the equinox, and suddenly everything was incredibly still here.
Yeah.
And I went and I just found myself wandering around the streets, but I became really aware of the way I was walking, like my feet, the way that they were touching the ground, and the lightness of everything, and
Hmm.
this, and also this sort of sudden quietness had come over everything as well. And then I went and sat in the local, we got like a little green sort of square type of thing just at the end of my road, and I sat there, and it was, it was getting into that sort of thing I was describing before, where I was just like looking at the sort of perfection of everything, and
Yeah.
just being kind of sort of quite quietly humbled by everything that was going on. And
Yeah.
and the sort of meanness of it was receding,
Yeah.
and I was just sitting, I just sat quietly with it. And then so that would have been um Wednesday night, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, and then I caught a cold. So just bring it back to the physical plane or
Yeah.
whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but become much more aware of, and also I laughed when I saw a dog go past at the non-speaking character.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
becoming it feels like more aware of the character operating as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's just like wide eye
conversation.
openness, right? Sorry, I'm just gonna put on my jacket. It's cold. Go ahead. Sorry.
Um, yeah, and sort of becoming more aware of the character in
Hmm.
operation. Um, but a general feeling of, there's definitely something's like it's not gone away.
Yeah.
It's not like as intense as it was on Wednesday
Yeah.
night, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's not gone away.
It's like a
It,
quietude, right? Something that is
yeah.
really, really like a solace, a serenity that is always there.
That's it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And that was, hugely evident on Wednesday night. But I thought before I had a 10 minutes spare before
yeah,
we met, and I thought I'd just sit quietly for 10 minutes.
yeah,
And the fact that I just thought that I'd do that is quite amusing to me anyway,
yeah.
because it wasn't like a right, I'm going to prepare myself for this meeting with Emerson because that's what you're supposed to do. It was like,
Yeah,
I think I might just sit quietly for 10 minutes.
yeah. It just
Um,
happened, didn't it? Right? It's just something that occurred almost automatically, um, without
yeah.
without any agenda, basically, right? It's just what it
Mm,
is. And
yeah.
and that quietude, that it's like an infiniteness to it, that there's
Mm,
really no break to it, there's no beginning or there's no end. um and then there's this seeming dance of thoughts and feelings and sensations that seems to arise from it, but it's not really that separate, right? So, and that's usually the breakthrough, that there's just interconnectedness, it's just oneness, so to speak. um and it doesn't matter if there's a you or no you that arises, right? Or non-speaking characters that passes by. It's just
mm.
all whole, it's all inherently whole. And um and that can't be quite comprehended by the apparent illusory mind, right? Because it's also a part of it, although it's not there really.
Mm,
Yeah, it's a part of it's like a dance, a dancing stillness, so to speak. And And it's hard to figure out because the moment you try to figure out, it moves again, but yet it's completely still.
Mm.
Yeah. And that it's always been this way. It's infinitely this way. And no matter what you think, and even if you look back, it's always been there, hasn't it?
Mm.
Yeah. That's shocking, right? It's kind of like, oh, it's always been this way. And that seems to be the things that usually comes out, with characters that are, breaking free from that character, that the
Mm.
character creates this narrative that it's missing something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
almost it's like a piece that seems to take over.
Yeah, and that sort of, there's a kind of I don't know how you'd say it. It's like it's almost got, it's like a wink,
It's a
it's
prank.
yeah, there's something kind of amusing and incredibly beautiful about the whole thing all at the same
Yeah.
time. It's like and I suppose it's kind of funny, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's like a cosmic joke, right? And the whole time, although there's no time, um it's just a play. It's just a play of a hide and seek, but there's really nothing hidden. It appears in
Mm.
everything. Yeah. And even realization of it is not a grasping of it, right? Because it's always this moving realization, so to speak. You're like, okay, kind of like what you said, that dog that was walking, passing by was just it too. It's just a
Mm.
non-speaking character, right?
Mm.
um and even when it seemingly, I guess during and after the yoga class, there was a heightened isness, right? Even when
Mm.
it settles, it's still there. And that's a
Yeah.
problem sometimes with characters. It's like when it settles a little bit, or when it mutes a little bit, right? When everything gets louder again, they think
Yeah.
they've lost it.
Yeah.
They think that they're like, okay, you know what, I had this great, experience or whatever. But the experience is what comes and goes. But what never leaves is the it's like the container for it. Although that's just trying to, again, capture something that cannot be put into words, right? The what holds it together, so to speak. All of
Yeah.
this experience is coming and going.
Mm.
Isn't it like poetry? Since you're a poet, you're seeing poetry in motion, right? You're like, oh my goodness, this is, yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of like a painting, I thought that's what it felt like to me. It was
yeah,
like I was inside some sort of painting, or the general ongoing feeling of that is,
yeah,
But also, it was interesting. I was talking to some people last night, and there was a guy kind of who was clearly reaching some sort of stage of like, what the fuck is going on, and I started talking to him, and then I started noticing myself going into this sort of guy who knows shit
yeah,
character.
yeah, yeah.
And it was like I started running out of rail. I heard the words were sort of coming out of my mouth, and I was
Yeah,
like, what does this character want from this? What
yeah,
what's its objective? And
yeah,
so I started having a conversation outside of the conversation, or
yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
whether it was a conversation. It was an observation,
yeah.
and uh, and I was just thinking,
It's like a claiming of
God, because
authority.
I had
It's like a
I had
claiming
a
of
lot of still,
authority, right? Like there's an authoritarian all of a sudden. Like, I
yeah,
know this
exactly.
stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, just the sort of like um seeking status in the
Yeah,
conversation,
yeah,
and then but also seeing that going on whilst it was going on. And in the past, I suppose, when that's happened, I've always that's always triggered a massive kind of egoic reaction of shame
yeah,
and all sorts of stuff. And then
yeah,
last night, I was like, there just wasn't really anything. That was just kind of there was just an observance of
yeah,
that going on
yeah,
and watching it happen,
yeah,
and then a feeling of like, that none of this really needs to be happening, really. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it was
It's
just going
it's
on, and it would just seem fairly pointless.
yeah. It's like a spell has been broken, hasn't it? Right? That identity, that that very solid identity, right, becomes kind of like, is this even, what is this character doing, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, what what is it trying to do, right?
Yeah.
And it's all
That's,
innocent as well, right? You're like, normally you'll be like, oh my goodness, I'm so ashamed of
I'm
what I
such a
did.
bad person. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
such a horrible kind of like egomaniac or whatever, right? But none of that sticks anymore, right? It's like, okay, that's it too. That's a part of it too, right?
yeah.
It's not about denying or accepting it, right? It's because denial and acceptance is just another doership. It's almost like the spell of doership is gone, right? It just happens. Words come out of your mouth.
Mm,
The ideas about the words that came out of your mouth also comes, right?
mm,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and they're trying to figure it out, and you're like, well, there's nothing really trying to figure out. So everything lands flat now, right? It doesn't go into a rabbit hole of thinking or a conspiracy or or a heightened sense of knowing or a state even, right? Because sometimes we get characters get to the tendency to either feel superior or
Mm,
inferior.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It could have gone the opposite way. You're like, oh my goodness, I know my shit now, and
But that becomes, I mean, it's an interesting thing from, listening to people has become instantly more interesting, in the
yeah,
sense, not interesting, but just the sense of just being in a place with another person, you know,
yeah,
it's kind of like, and I go and speak to my teacher after class and we go for a coffee and we talk about stuff.
yeah,
And in the past, I've always been like, he's a lot older than me, and it's,
yeah,
so there's a sort of, I suppose the 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 sort of interplay has been me as desperate son, wishing to impress father. That's
yes,
been the sort of interplay of it all. And
yeah,
then yesterday, I was just sort of, we were just gently sitting together,
yeah,
and I know he felt it too, and it was
yeah,
quite a sweet moment, really. Um, but this morning I woke up and had like I woke up in a dream, and the
yeah,
dream was like really kind of, it was huge sort of ego stuff going on. It was
yeah,
a friend of mine, who's a female friend, who had become for some reason my girlfriend, who was hanging out with some guy behind a table,
yeah,
and I was talking a load of bullshit,
yeah,
and I
yeah, yeah,
looked over the table, and she and she was doing something like this. Like,
yeah,
listen
yeah,
to him
yeah,
talk,
yeah,
and I was wounded, and in my dream I was wounded by this, um, by being by her calling me out as talking bullshit, even though. And then I was like, "How could you do this to me?" And then I woke up and I was like, "Oh my God, what was going on there?" And then
yeah,
and then
yeah, yeah. Because the apparent character has nowhere to act now, right? So it acts in the nighttime dream now, so it's free again
ah,
in the night. I shared something similar to a person that I was talking to earlier today at 6 o'clock in the morning here, and I said that he asked, how are your dreams now? I'm like, my dreams are non-existent, really. It's more of clouds and blue. It's deep sleep
right,
basically. I said, but I
mm,
remember, the first couple of months of this apparent what isness or whatever, right? Um, the Emerson would be belligerent in the nighttime dream. It was so
mm,
vivid, right? That it would be kind of like a spiritual teacher. It would be a mess. It would be everything that you could imagine, right? Was just
yeah,
every night. And I was like, it's almost like it got trapped in a different dimension or whatever, right?
amazing,
Which is just another story, of course, right? But it was acting out. It was really fully acting out,
yeah,
belligerently and annoyingly and cloyingly seeking attention, so to speak, right? It's almost like, I'm here. And then, of course, the moment that the weakness, the eyes open, you're like, that's hilarious. At first, I was
mm,
like, what was that? Right? Kind of like what you were saying. But yeah, and then it flattened out. It flattened out when it's almost like a retired character that has been written off the script, keeps
that's
showing up on the stage, acting
yeah,
out, and the director goes, "You're cut off. You know what? There's no need for you in this story anymore, right?" And he goes, well, I have all of this. I have all of this acting methods, and I have these, memorized all the lines. So what do you mean I'm cut off? We changed the script, kind of thing, right? It's
Yeah.
there's no you. You're not, or someone that goes to the office and keeps on showing up at work after retirement and not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. From our last talk, from our last talk, I feel that calmness now has with you, right? The last time it was just it was almost how do I call it? All kind of neurosis, right? That was
Mm.
happening. A lot of storytelling, right? And hear me out, kind of thing. But it's perfect as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's kind of it's the sort of storytelling and internal stuff is still coming in waves. It's
of
like
course. Yeah, yeah,
but it's kind of like it's becoming less interesting,
yeah,
which is kind of fascinating
yeah.
or not. But I mean, it's like things that have completely consumed.
Mm.
I've found myself in places where it's running, the stories are running.
Of course, of course. Kind of like what I said. It's still that character that keeps on trying to show up at work, and but it's redundant now, right? It has nothing to do. So it tries to make a case for its existence in stories, but you'll see that slowly unravel again, where you're like, okay, it's almost like it will come up stories, and it's basically a lot of assumptions and belief systems, which is just a story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It was interesting on the next the same day actually. There's just been this feeling of departure happening.
yeah,
And the guy who's supposed this place where I'm in at the moment is
yeah,
going to be sort of stripped out and redecorated and stuff like that. And
yeah,
the builder called up and said, right, we're starting on this day. And I
yeah,
looked at my diary and it's like, oh shit, I've got to pack straight
yeah. Oh
away.
wow.
So you're gone.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't know, I might come back. I don't know. But
yeah.
it's kind of like that was kind of an interesting thing that happened as well. It's just like another thing that's been sort
That's
of
wild, right?
waiting to happen. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're gone. And I looked and I'm doing all these things,
yeah.
going to Italy and
Wow.
all in time. Yeah. So it's like
It's a
that's
whole
kind of
bunch of departures for you, huh? Right? It's
oh my God, like one
yeah,
after another.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
thick and fast and things that I thought would be, really kind of making a massive
yeah,
difference to my life in the sense of worry or this or that. And
yeah.
I'm
And to
just
and to think that our first session was just a couple of days ago.
yeah,
Yeah, right? Wild, right?
really
It's almost
wild.
like time got collapsed or something. Um,
It's collapsing or
yeah,
has
yeah.
collapsed.
It's almost like everything was almost like in a loop, right? And all of a sudden, the loop is where's the loop? Like everything is moving again, seemingly, right? There was a stuckness before, seemingly.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Massive.
yeah,
Like for a really long time.
yeah,
And even and I spoke to my son yesterday, my eldest son, and he
yeah,
was like, I've been really worried about him.
yeah. How old is
And
your
he said,
son?
I've got a 23 and a
Oh,
19,
yeah.
and
Wow.
and
Well, you
23
look
year
young.
old.
You look young, so.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
You should see me with my makeup on.
Okay,
Um,
yeah. What character
with
do
the
you play in the
suntan.
stage when you have your makeup on? Oh yeah, yeah, stage play, right?
I
So
know, that was figuratively.
I'm just joking too. I was trying to get in on the joke if you noticed, like what
Oh, right.
character do you play?
Oh, I see. Sorry, I thought you were talking
Yeah, yeah,
about right. Okay,
yeah,
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 great. Yeah.
yeah.
What
On the
character?
stage.
Well, I mean, we had that story, didn't it? That whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It started with an exorcist that then went to a
That's right.
clown,
Yeah, yeah.
which is very funny still.
Yeah. That is really, really funny. Yeah. So how was your son? Sorry. You were
Well, I
saying.
mean, I've been worried about him, and
Yeah.
he's sort of been going through it, and he's got a he's ended up with a needing an operation, which he's having on Monday,
Hmm.
which felt very much like, a jolt for him.
Yeah.
Suddenly he called me up a couple of days ago and says, I'm trading. And I said, wow, well, what? And then he's got one of these sort of things on the financial markets where
Yeah.
you get a fake $5,000 and you trade it and
Yeah.
you start working the stock market. And I've seen him do things like this before,
Yeah.
and and he's like, I can just tell he's got something. He's a musician, but
Yeah. Oh
his
wow.
idea is
Yeah.
that the problem is that money for him, is getting money to try and put his work out there. So he says, well, if I
Yeah.
become a
A
super
trader.
wealthy stock trader, then I can
Yeah. Yeah.
just put all my music out there. And I thought, well,
Yeah.
that sounds like a good idea to me. So
Yeah.
that's been
Yeah.
another something that seems to have come at the same time with a feeling that and we had a thing last week where I agreed to stop playing the character of his father in an annoying way.
Yeah. Especially for a 20-year-old, that's the I remember when I was in my early 20s, right? Um I thought I was such an adult. Um that any kind of fathering or mothering, right, was I was allergic to it. I'm like, I'm 21 years old.
Yeah. What's is commonly characterized as tell me what to do, don't tell me what to do.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the sort of phase which
Yeah.
comes out of, teen into early 20s. It's like, I
That's right.
want your
Yeah.
support, but don't say anything.
That's right. Help me, but I don't need help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just agree, just shut up and agree with me,
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to do. Yeah. They're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
get
Just
it, get it.
yeah, it's yeah, a lot of things seemingly, right, is stuck in the character's seeming control, but the character doesn't have any control. And it's like a phantom, right, that seems to run life, but there's no life to run because life happens on its own, as you can probably see now, right?
Mm,
Like it kind of like what you said. I like to also call it like a masterpiece, right? It's like a painting that's moving.
mm,
There are going to be some dark hues to make the picture pop out, right? There's going to be some lightness to it and darkness, and especially those paintings in like in Rome, right? I know you've seen those like massive masterpieces where there's an angelic realm and there's like a hell on the
mm.
opposite side, right? And in the middle there's this character, or multitudes of characters, and it's just fascinating, right? So one time I was looking at this, I'm like, wow, this is like a masterpiece of a painting. And when
Mm.
you are so focused on your identity, you miss out on a whole big picture of this masterpiece, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Well,
might
just
not
sitting.
like it, but it's just a masterpiece. You know what I'm saying? It's still a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just sitting there consumed with your own shit, or what you
That's
perceive
right.
to be that, you
Yeah.
know,
It's like a tunnel
playing
vision.
out. Yeah. 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 What is it? Micromanaging everything,
That's right. Yeah.
but completely unable to manage anything because you can't, it's managing itself. But
What a
you're standing,
mess, huh?
I'm, what, like those children's fairground rides.
Yeah.
You know, you get to turn the handle and pretend you're driving.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You could do that furiously, couldn't you? You
Yes.
could sit there with behind
Yeah.
that fake steering wheel as the thing goes round and round and
Yeah.
round,
Yeah. Yeah.
by controlling it in the middle, and you could say, "God, man, this is really tough. It's really
That's right.
tough.
Yeah.
Such a
Or
difficult
sometimes,
thing to drive
or
this
sometimes
car."
the kid thinks they're doing really well. They think they're like, look, mom, I'm driving this thing. It's moving. I'm such an expert now, right? And
Yes, you are, darling. You are.
yes, you
Yes, you
are.
are.
Yeah, sweetie. Yeah, yeah.
You're
And then
doing
it
amazingly.
stops. And then it stops, and you're like, again, again. I was
Yeah.
driving so well, or I'm about to get there, like you're it's I use this story of all your life you think that you're driving and you have taken all the driving lessons and become aware of the road, so to speak, aware of the traffic, aware of the whatever. And then all of a sudden there's a tap on your shoulder, and then someone tells you that that you're driving a self-driving car, right? Like a Tesla. And no matter what you do, it's just going to drive on your own. And then you look back further and you're like, oh, it's a kid ride. It's just going around and around. I'm not even doing anything.
Mm.
So we're trapped, seemingly the character is trapped in this child's play. Rather than enjoying the ride, we get serious about it, right? And thinking that then we have road rages and everything, and thinking that we could change the way that others drive, but no one's even driving in the other car. It's just a merry-go-round. It's just a car that's just going in circles, right? And it's not even a bumper car. I love those bumper cars.
Not
But
even
yeah,
that.
but it's just it's a play. It's a game, but there's no players in it. You just think that you're in it, and it just keeps on going into this seeming and then everything becomes ordinary. I don't know, it's quite early seemingly in the story for you, right? But everything, the ordinary is it. The sipping the tea, the boiling water for the tea, right? It
Mm.
just becomes the very kind of like what you were saying when you were just walking, right? There was
Mm.
something that was just so ordinary about it. It's humbling, isn't it? Right? That it appears in the most minute details.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. You know, just I was sitting on this bench and I turned around and there was this little girl just sitting on another bench a bit further away with her parents over there, and it was all just suddenly like, oh, of course, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Just quite sort of a beautiful moment in looking at this, and then watching the mind say, okay, she's probably about 7 years old, and so she's probably thinking, and what she think, and then it's just like, that
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want that.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Yeah.
do that bit. I just want to look at the beauty of this, or
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
even I want to. I just am. That's what I'm doing,
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah.
and there's a sort of a peace in coming to that sort of you know, this sort of odd mind helper wanting to come in all the time, and like tour guides.
Yeah. Yeah.
You, they go along with a flag and a sort of
Yeah.
loud
Yeah.
hail or whatever, and they
Yeah. We are
stop and
now
everything.
passing by this historic landmark. You just really want to enjoy, you know, the
And
scenery, right?
everybody's there nodding their heads,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like having one of those that you didn't ask for, I
That's
think.
right. And on your left.
And this person's a bit weird.
That's
Yeah,
right.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
person's being a bit weird. There's definitely something going on here. So maybe you're not safe, and maybe
Yeah.
maybe they and you shouldn't be friends with them. And
That's right.
and
Yeah.
what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, you know what, the tour guide, they'll admit that, oh yeah, I was a bit hungover. Sorry, that's not the palace. It's the next one. Um, Scrap that.
None of the people lived there that I said lived.
So,
Charlie Chaplin was not king of this.
that's right. Yeah. And then even the cold is it too.
Yeah, that's really weird, actually. I've
Yeah.
been having a kind of like, I'm not, I'm sort of like, I did have this moment where I was like, is all this stuff that's going on, is it really just because I've got a cold?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it all and when the cold finishes, it's all going to stop.
See, that's the narrator, that's a tour guide again saying that there's a cold. So, oh no, no, that's not a cold, or oh, is it? And it's just it's almost like the narrator has no idea of what's going on, doesn't it? So it tries to make up a whole bunch of stuff, right? Like that's a little girl and everything, and it tries to create the narrative. But when you look at it in a without any thoughts, are you really looking at a little girl? Are you really looking at the world? Are you looking at colors without any description?
Yeah.
um and or are you looking at wholeness, and the dream thinking, you know
Mm,
um creates this dream labeling, and it
mm,
creates this assumption of what you're looking at based on the guide. The It's like watching a silent movie that does not need any narration, and then you see all of these subtitles, like those things to evoke an emotion, when it's just really a silent movie, right? And
mm,
everything is just just this elegant, intricate movements of stillness. Um, and because we can't comprehend stillness and movement as the same, then we'll say that, well, that's a little girl and that's the Buckingham Palace, or on your left is so it creates a tour guide, but it's just this whole, because what's seeing the girl or the Buckingham Palace is not different from it. It's the same. So you can't comprehend that there's no subject and object. The appearances are, there's going to be, objects and, chairs and tea and colors and everything, but the color is not different from what's looking at the color. So the what's looking is also stillness that's moving as vision. It's fascinating. And there's really, what's being looked at is the same as what's looking. There's no separation from that. So that's when it's expressed that, what's out being longed for is what's looking. It's the same, yeah. And again, it's hard to grasp that, right? Because I'm like, how could that be? The guide, right away says, well, there's got to be separation. There's an experience of separation. But even if you look at the experience and the sensations and the feelings, it's not separate from the colors and the silence and everything, right? It's a part of this masterpiece. It's a painting. So the feelings are like light strokes, like almost ephemeral strokes, right? And then sensations are like fleeting, kind of like, um, pastel stuff, right? Or sometimes bold, vivid colors, right? That appears as feelings as well. But they're just all like swirling paintings that's always moving, like a moving painting. And it's beautiful. You know what I'm saying? The painting is not just one dimensional, it's everywhere. It's like everything is a canvas. And it's whole. It's wild, isn't it? Yeah. And somehow, you know what I'm saying? Because it's hard to talk about this, because it's impossible, the poetry comes out. And it mimics the poetry of what is happening that's not happening even. It's just art. It's grand art, right? It's high art. What seems to be appearing, it's like the details, right? It's so humbling that it appears in all of the figments and all of the structures, small, wild, and the universe is even just another illusion, right? So if the scientists are beginning to figure out that there's really no universe, how dare we think that we exist?
Yeah.
If it can't even be maintained as a reality, right? That, like there's a theory that like, well, I guess there's no universe, right? Because they can't seem to. I've read it once, but science is always trying to come up with something. You know what I'm saying? That can't be reached, right? So, it's something that it's almost like we inherently know that there's really no universe. There's an inherent, not even a knowing, I don't know what to call it, right? An inherent isness that there's no us here. And yet when we think, you know what I'm saying, we can conclude that we're here or whatever. But there's really no conclusion to that, because that just conclusion is just another thought. So without the thought, there's really no conclusions. Like if there's a happening that all of the thoughts get muted, then what would this be without a guide, without any whispers, without any echoes of nothing? What would this be? Would there even be a question?
Well, I guess there wouldn't, but who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah. It's like the babies have any questions when you see toddlers and babies, infants, basically, when they look at this, but they don't even know what suffering is.
No.
Hunger happens and they cry, right? And they see something that glimmers and they smile at it.
Yeah, and you can see that happening,
Yeah.
2 seconds. One baby screaming, baby laughing,
Yeah.
baby playing, baby distracted, eating. It's
Yeah.
amazing to watch when you see them do it. They're
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah. We're also like that. You'll start seeing it. You'll start seeing it. Right.
Yeah.
It's like when there was a lot of silence here, when I was just left speechless. I was walking, and then I would pass by and see a reflection of me, and I'll jump out. I'm like, what is that? I'm like, oh, okay, that's Emerson, that kind of thing. Because it's just a whole bunch of ideas that there is a reflection or whatever, right? But something that doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. And trying to make sense of it creates this neurosis of like, what is this? But what is this without the question, what is this? What is this without the words?
Mm,
Yeah.
that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah. What
What
do
is
you
this
look?
without the words, and what is this without the thoughts?
That's right. Yeah. What are you looking at without thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, full stop or
Yeah.
period.
Period.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Which is the hilarious thing, is that the period.
Yeah.
It's just like forget about
Yeah.
it.
That's right. Yeah. It's fascinating. Like every time that you wake up in the morning, it's just a blank. And then the canvas appears again. You're like, my name is Murray. I have a yoga class, I'm going to Italy. I have two sons. But when you're not thinking
La la
about that,
la la la.
la 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 la, blah, 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 right? And
Mm.
all throughout the day, Murray, appears and disappears, right? It's not really there, right? It's coming and going. And then a moment that it sits down for a few minutes and it ponders what life is for Murray. And it goes back into to its, holographic memory. And you're like, well, you know what? I'm at this age now and I should be there, but it's just a story. So who cares?
Yeah, I was talking to someone last night about this. It's quite funny. As I don't know, I mentioned it to you before, but it's like, did you said you're a journal keeper?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. I
So
had volumes and volumes and volumes of it, right? I had those leather bound, those expensive ones that you would buy. And
right,
I thought that my words and journals were so pertinent and important, right? That I would
worthy of leather.
worthy of leather and calligraphy. You know what I'm saying? So I
Oh,
would
really? Right. Okay. Did you use a feather as well?
no, I used the instant ones, of course, right? But um the feather one always bled, right? So it would always bleed into the page, right? So I would use the I attempted.
Yeah.
But go ahead, sorry, yeah.
Well, that thing of you remember it as so,
Yeah.
and then if you go back into the however many years ago, I've got one from when I was a kid. I went on a road trip in the USA when I was about 20 maybe,
Yeah.
and I found it the other day and had all these sort of memories of like it
Yeah,
went like
yeah.
this. And then you read the journal, none of it went like that.
No, no, yeah, yeah. Isn't it
and
wild?
and then a load of stuff happened in between that you
Yeah.
can't remember at all, and
Yeah.
and the whole thing takes on a different idea. So the whole concept of of where you come from, it's a bit
Yeah.
of a sketchy old thing, isn't it, really?
It is. It is. When the email age came, right? Because I also had a secret email account that I would write my journals to. Dear Emerson, um, yeah, dear Emerson at gmail.com, right? So I would write, and I just got the password back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So all of a sudden I was like, oh my goodness, I have a lot of new materials now because I don't have any recollection of most of it, right? Most of it, it's just a whole bunch of garbage, right? And meaning that everything that I thought was important before was just junk.
Mm. Yeah, I
Like
mean,
I
I
would
can
I would I would say that, I'm on my 50th day of my mantra, whatever, and I don't even remember the mantra. I didn't even know what it was just a whole bunch of my spiritual stuff, right? And
Mm.
because I was one of those seekers that had A Course in Miracles with a workbook open. I had the yamas and the yamas from Patanjali. I read the Bhagavad Gita. I did the awareness consciousness practice. You know what I'm saying? I did a self inquiry, the who am I, all, you name it, right? So I would have journal entries on all of my practices, right? And I was just like, what the hell? Fascinating, fascinating. But yeah.
Was this your pre-guru phase?
Yes, pre-guru
You're
pace. And then
building
and then
steadily towards becoming a
yeah,
guru.
yeah, because here I was arming myself with all of this spiritual knowledge, right? I thought that I was so important that I had to document my practices so I can share, you know what I'm saying, my
Yeah, yeah,
wisdom
yeah.
that I've accumulated over the
Share.
years. Share, yeah.
Lucky everybody else, huh?
That's right. Yeah. One day I will be documented and that kind of thing. Well, I threw away my journals because I had a lot of quote books as well.
Oh
So my
wow. Yeah.
journals became quote books from, according to, I didn't even have any kind of my own writing when the quotes started coming in, right? According to this, according to Ramana, according to everybody
Yeah.
basically, right?
Yeah.
And some of them are beautiful, saying, but some of them are goes in a loop in a circle.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a stack of index cards about that thick, which I was
Oh,
very proud.
yes, right. Like all of a sudden, your chest, you're a walking encyclopedia of quotes from the masters and everything. To hide that
Yeah.
you don't really know anything.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
And then that was the character that I was watching coming out last night.
yeah.
And instead of feeling
You were
instead of
preaching,
feeling
right, Mary? You
embarrassed.
were preaching.
Oh yeah, it definitely got there. And there was an old man, and I saw him turn his head towards me, and he was like, "What's this bullshit?"
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but instead of feeling like, "Oh God, I did it again,"
yeah,
you know, what a terrible thing to have done. I
yeah,
should be ashamed of myself. I
yeah,
should be so much more advanced than this, and all that sort
yeah,
of bullshit stuff
yeah,
that then comes in as the backwash to that sort of behavior. I just
yeah.
thought, fuck,
What a
it was
relief, right? It's
kind of
like,
funny just watching it
yeah,
happen. So I sort of flipped out of the point of being caught up in it,
yeah.
took the hand off the wheel, watched it carried on doing itself, and just
Mm-hmm.
thought, right, okay,
Yeah, the character is like a method actor, right? That gets caught up in its own method acting, right? And then when it's almost like when this happens, you snap out of that method acting. I know some people that have been in method acting for years, right? They get caught up in that role, right? And
yeah,
and you confuse it with what is, right? So it becomes your identity, and
oh yeah, yeah. Well, it was
right?
so interesting last night. What happened was I just suddenly realized that it was done for me actually, or it was just
Yeah,
so suddenly this guy shows up and he's dressed in bright colored clothing. He's got a little hat on and a
yeah,
scarf and a red jacket, and he's
yeah,
talking about how amazing children's films are. And he would be what termed as autistic.
yeah.
Um, and he was an autistic artist. And
Oh wow.
so there's the middle of this kind of like conversation about, so what is the mind? La la
Yeah.
la la la. And this guy said, I really like frogs.
Wow. Beautiful answer.
And and then suddenly the whole table just flipped over to and he said, I've been stealing frog spawn. And we were like, oh really? That's really interesting. And then we got into when does a tadpole become a frog? Well, what point? And he was like, and then he had a flask on the table and he said, I really like this flask. I really like it. And I was like, why is that? And he said, well, I it's my favorite thing. And
Beautiful.
just swept the whole thing away.
Wow.
Had no sort of he was doing exactly what we were talking about earlier, just reacting to things.
Yeah, you know what? I used to teach meditation to a group of autistic kids,
Mm,
and I was won over by them, right? I was just like, these are gems, right? They're just jewels in disapparent appearances, right? Because I saw the beauty and how they are, and of course I grew up with an uncle that has Down syndrome, right? So I've loved, I never see any kind of disability or anything like that, right? For
mm,
me it was just something that I wanted, because I'm used to that, so to speak, the innocence and the beauty of the different kinds of characters, so to speak, right? And
mm,
when I
mm,
was a
mm.
spiritual teacher, I think that part was what I loved the most, was going
Right.
to, see them stimming and all that kind of stuff like that. And all of the
Mm,
parents and all of the guys were trying to correct them and everything. I just saw beauty, and I was mesmerized by it, right? Because it almost, it was almost like seeing presence as is, just
mm.
reacting without any kind of like narrative and everything. So it was one of those things that when I was doing my decade long of teaching, one of the beautiful things that I did was just to be with them. They taught me more than I could teach them. They were just really present. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's and I was doing a whole spectrum of them, and somehow, you know what, they knew that I didn't have any judgments whatsoever with them, right? So they were very direct with me. They were very honest with me. And then some, teachers would come in, try to teach them yoga or whatever. They would react differently because they were trying to fix them. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah. Kind of like that guy that just took over the room, right? Wasn't it beautiful just to see that, just as is? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because normally the character would try to judge that, right? Would be like, oh, you know what, all that kind of stuff, because the societal norm, of the way that we talk and everything, that seem unusual, but that's the brilliant part of the masterpiece, right? That's the beautiful kind of like
Mm.
spot flash of color somewhere, right? That makes
Yeah.
this whole life interesting.
Yeah. It was strange because then after that, I went and spoke to this artist,
Yeah.
and he was telling me how he gets paid. He he looks up where these people live on the west coast of the
Yeah.
United States, and he finds out how much their house is worth, and then he says to them when they call him up and try and get the painting for $4,000 less, he says, "I know where you live." And he was like, "I know, you see, I know." And they know I know, and I always get paid. And and the and then the autistic guy came up, and I said, he said, um, I said, this is whatever the guy's name was. He's talking about getting paid as an artist. And the
Yeah.
autistic guy said, I think that's really sad. Really hilarious. And then there was the other one. I love this scarf.
Yeah.
I really, really love this scarf.
So
And stuff like that was just coming straight out. It's just fabulous.
yeah, that's a really nice scarf, actually. Yeah.
His was a Where's Wally. He was dressed as, yeah, have you know Where's Wally?
No, no. What's that?
Oh, it's kind of an interesting thing to look at. It's basically it's this big scenes, cartoon scenes, and there's a
Okay.
character, there's a character called Wally in it,
Okay.
and
I'll look it up.
and he dressed kind of like that.
Oh,
But yeah,
cool.
but
Yeah,
you'll
my uncle that I grew up with, he's only about 2 3 years older than me. My grandmother had him when she was he was not planned at all, right? So she was an elderly, and she had not an elderly, but quite old when she had him, right? So the chances of him, being more kind of like with Down syndrome, but he's like the heart of the family, right? He's just the
yeah,
most kind and wonderful person, right? And innocence and all that kind of stuff, right? And
funny as well. Yeah,
funny as hell. Yeah,
Down
funny as
syndrome
hell.
people are so funny.
Funny.
You know,
Yeah. And just
have you seen
joy
it?
to be around them, right? It's just innocence. It's just I used to give him shirts, and he would actually not wear the shirts that I give him because it was too precious for him.
Oh, that's
So
sweet.
sweet. So sweet, right? When he came here one time, because it's not a lot of things. He's treated like a kid, right? So I'm like, Uncle, we're gonna go to a donut shop. I'm gonna eat as much donuts. He goes, Really? I'm like, kind of get a whole bunch of donuts, and we just, you know, like two little kids just ate a whole bunch of donuts between the two of us, and we came back home, and they're like, "What did you do?" I'm like, "Nothing." My uncle was like laughing. It just reminded me of that sweet innocence, right? And um, of course, I found out that he was pre-diabetic and he should have not done that.
uh,
That's why they're probably watching what he ate and everything, because he. But yeah, just sweet, sweet, pure innocence, and just um, yeah, there's just something wondrous about this appearances when we don't have any kind of preconceived notions or judgments, because I knew my uncle's a little kid, so I had no reference on how to
mm,
judge him. I was wondering why it was in a little province in the Philippines why people made fun of him, and I didn't understand that,
mm,
because we were very, very close in age and everything, right? So he was actually my protector. He would hold my hand and goes, "Don't mind those people," that kind of thing. So
oh,
he got a thick skin from that quite fast, right?
yeah,
So
yes, you do.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that was, what, when I was a spiritual teacher, I really wanted to work with, because I see them like my uncle, right? I see
Yeah.
my uncle as just love, basically, and not as Down syndrome or autism. I see him. It's hard to explain it, but you know what I'm
No,
talking
no,
about,
no.
right?
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
have you seen the Down syndrome cooking show?
No, I haven't.
I've seen a couple of clips of it. It's
Yeah,
just absolutely brilliant, and they're so cool. They're just like they're totally into it, and
yeah,
like they're a team,
yeah.
and it's just a friend of mine has a Down syndrome son, and we were doing a sort of literary festival last year, and I was there with a friend of mine, and this guy, this kid, just walked up behind the woman who was with
Yeah.
me and just put his hands into her hair.
Oh.
And started doing that, and she was like, and you could tell that she was quite shocked, and then she was like, she turned around, she saw it was him, and she said, "Ah, okay." He said, "Did you like that?"
Well, you
And
know
she
what?
said, "Well," she said it was quite surprising. And then his
Yeah,
mother came in and said, "You must tell him if you don't want him to put his hands in your hair. It's
yeah,
okay."
yeah. I was down one day, and I was in a subway in Toronto somewhere, and I was really, really depressed, right? And out come the train, maybe about 20 kids with Down syndrome, and they were hiding behind the pillars, in the subway station, and I just felt like I was in heaven. I was like, okay, thank you. It's just they were smiling, and it was so beautiful. And Down syndrome is a whole spectrum too, right? Some of them are really, really high functioning, that they can
Right.
take jobs and all that kind of stuff. But what remains is that innocence, that's always the sweetness that
Mm.
that I see, right? It's almost like um it looks like we're the ones that is disabled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my
With all
mother,
of our thinking, with all of our, with all of our musings on life and our suffering and all that kind of stuff like that, compared to the innocence of some of, I'm not generalized, but some of the people with Down syndrome that I see, right? Um, I felt like I was the one that was damaged, right? Because that's generally how people look at, people with Down syndrome, or that there's something wrong with them.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, my mother was a teacher for people with in various different spectrums of various different conditions and whatever. So
yeah,
I was brought
okay,
up with them,
yeah, yeah,
and people with all sorts of stuff, you
yeah,
know. And the thing I always remember noticing about Down syndrome people is that when they were cross,
yeah.
you know, they decided that they were really, really, really angry.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
They're,
yeah,
they're, they're not. They just can't really do it, can they? They just can't. They
yeah,
can be. They can be. They can
yeah.
be disappointed, but they don't. They can't latch on to the malignant
No,
element
no, no,
of
no,
anger
no.
at all. They just.
It
They're
comes
just
in a
like,
flash, right? I'm like, okay,
yeah,
there's it comes in a flash, and they're like, and then gone. It's like being,
yeah,
that's what I'm saying, the innocence, right? And that's what's happening here now too, is that, I thought I lost that innocence when I was a kid, when I was hanging around with my uncle, that there was no judgment and there was just freedom. And I watched these videos of animals, reuniting with the human, and I just bawl my eyes out, right? And I didn't know how to cry before. I laugh
mm,
at the silliest jokes now, right?
mm,
Even if it's not appropriate, right? It's There's just this, I don't have to be politically correct anymore, right? It's just this. And that's what seems to unravel too, seemingly in the stories, because I have become a method actor of a serious Emerson, for a long, long time, right? So,
Yeah.
and I was,
Yeah.
and I would have my chest puffed up, and with a straight kind of like stance, and really talking slowly. And
Mm.
I lost that magic, what I'm saying, seemingly in the story anyway, of that
Wonder.
can, the wonder, yeah, that bewilderment, right?
Mm.
That yeah, the wonder. And and now, what I'm saying, it's like I can walk into, like, I had a walk this morning, and I have that wonder all the time now. It's never gone. It's always there. It's only when we get into our guy that's a method actor, we became serious, right? That it's like, it's like we're almost closed off. The characters are closed off to this wonderfulness of what seems to be appearing.
Yeah. And I was sort of almost just after the dream last night, sort of waking and sort of thinking, well, it's not going to last anyway, that sort of stuff. And we'll have to go back to the way it is and da 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 da. And then
Yeah.
I was like, that's just a load of bullshit coming out of
Yeah,
my.
yeah.
And then you sort of like look out of the corner of your eyes and it's like, it hasn't gone away
No,
because it's here anyway.
it's here. It's always here. It's always here. No matter what you think, no matter how you deny it, no matter how you accept it, it does not require you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's not about acceptance or recognition or denial, or because it's always here.
mm,
The wonder is always here. That innocence is always here, right? That clarity without words, clarity without your input, right?
clarity.
Yeah.
Clarity.
Yeah. It's just clarity, basically, right? It's kind of like, it's like, if it's sad, it's sad. It's not about trying to change that. Clearly, it's sadness. Clearly, it's frustration. Clearly, whatever, right? And then the guide goes, well, that sadness is tinged with a little bit of hope. And around the corner, there's a longing for liberation. That guide, right? It's irrelevant now, right? That guide is completely irrelevant, because it's a false narrative.
Whereas a meeting with a brightly colored clothing autistic person by chance then becomes a delight,
It
rather
does, right?
than,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
meeting anybody becomes, I mean, oh, not anybody really, but
Yeah.
I think, you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, what they say, right? I'm not sure who said this. I think maybe it's Terrence McKenna, or maybe, um see, I've forgotten all my quotes. I don't get it right anymore. Um Everything is just God in drag.
God in drag, that's
Yeah, yeah.
Ram Dass.
Ram Dass. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, Terrence McKenna. Sorry. Well, Terrence McKenna and Ram Dass were friends, right? So I
Yeah,
associate them as
in
you
the
know
in the sort of magic bus days, I think they were.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They were buddies, right? So maybe Ram Dass was taking some, psilocybin with Terrence, and
Oh,
he
you'd
said
imagine.
everything is God in drag,
Yeah,
or a brightly colored autistic kid.
absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Very immediate as well.
Yeah, it's very direct now, right? Isn't it so direct that it's like, how did I not see this?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's so yeah, it's so fascinating, right? Again, it's almost like, like a I compared it to, like, you become a racehorse with those blinders, right? And you're just
mm,
concentrated on your destination, right? And the carrot, like that you're chasing
mm.
that carrot, right? That's dangling in front of you, and you're just really focused. If I get that carrot, then I'll, um you know release from all of this bondage. But that's just an illusion, right? There's really no blinders. And then you look around, you're like, that's why sometimes when I do one-on-ones, and I think I noticed some of that happening in 2 days ago when we did that first one, there was almost like, trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense, looking around kind of thing.
Mm.
There was lightness, right? Or I was talking to someone in person actually, and he said it's like it's like being high, right? Because when that fog, right, of thinking, that illusion, starts kind of like clearing up, you're like, oh, this is just clarity without words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say that the interesting part of our last conversation is there was kind of a moment you were like, well, it felt like you were like, well, it's not going to happen for you today.
Yeah.
And it may take a while, and there are kids who do it in 20 minutes, but that's not what's happening for you. And I was like, oh shit, of course, because that's just what always happens to me. It just never happens. And then and then and then I kind of like let go of that.
Yeah, yeah,
And that was
yeah,
kind of that was an interesting moment
yeah.
where
Because
like it's not happening to you.
it has nothing to do with you. Yeah, yeah. That's just the concept again, right? That you
Yeah.
can be, um, and it's, yeah, in the story, right? There seems to be this narrative, but it's just a story. Who cares?
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
just a story again, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
again, and and yeah, you know what? It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's just another story. Or the opposite could have gone, and you would have been kind of like, well, I'm almost there now. Then it has something to do with you again, right? I've had a lot of this, whatever, glimpses and everything. So I'm primed for it. You know, just say the
Oh
word,
no,
Emerson.
no, I gave that one up a long time
You
ago.
did.
Yeah.
Good, good.
Forget about it. Yes. Abandon all hope. Yeah, yeah. All hope has been abandoned for me.
Well, I had another one that I was talking to, and similar stories that you were holding on to, right? And like, she's like, well, I'm like turning, 70 soon, right? So, you know, there's if I was 20 years old, then maybe this would have clicked faster, right? And as she was saying that, she goes, I'm just saying another story, am I not? Right. And I'm like, yes. And then there was a long,
Mm.
long pause. She goes, age is just a number. And I'm like, yeah, it's just not even that. There's not even a number. And then she said, if you don't mind, let's stop this conversation right now. And I'll call you again. And then she called me, of course. She said, I just saw everything that I was thinking about was just irrelevant. It was all bullshit, basically. She kept on coming up with excuses and excuses and excuses, right? She was like, okay, what do you have, Emerson? That kind of thing. And we started talking. It was only like about 30 minutes or less than that, right? And she just paused for a moment because she caught she caught the bullshit, basically. And that's probably
Yeah.
what happened to you too. You were catching the bullshit, right? You were like beginning to like, okay, wait a second.
I don't know actually. I've
Yeah.
I've got
You
absolutely
don't know.
no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
I just kind of like suddenly everything was, significantly. No, it was kind of like like that sort of thing if you've ever taken like ecstasy or
Yeah.
something and
Yeah.
you
Yeah. Like the lights
feel like
come
you're
on a little
coming
bit.
up on drugs, you're
Yeah.
coming up on some sort of drug. And it was kind of like, am I coming up on drugs? Does this feel like I'm coming up on drugs? Why is everybody looking, what's going on here? And then hour and a quarter of yoga came out of that. And it was
Yeah.
just like,
Woof. Yeah.
it was like, it's maybe because it's dark now,
Yeah.
or maybe because there's no wind.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Maybe
it tries to
I'm a bit,
negotiate, isn't it? Right? It's negotiation still happening, right? It's like, this is it. Come on. Like, well, maybe, what? It's funny, right? But it's almost like when it has nothing to do with you. So you're trying to make it about you. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah,
And then it will keep on, it's almost like pushing off the cliff, but there's no one to push off the cliff. It's free
right,
falling now. Yeah, this is free falling, basically. Words come in and out.
yeah,
There's no solidity anymore. There's no you to hold on to anymore. Even if the you idea comes in, it vanishes again. It's like that quark now, right? Like quark coming in and out, which is seemingly the what appears in an illusion, right? It comes in and out. It's not permanent. That's why it's an illusion.
Mm.
Yeah. Well played, illusion. Huh? Well played. What a long con. Slow clap.
Yeah, good innings, as they say in England.
What's it called? What do you say? Good
Good
innings?
inning is like
Good
if you
in
play cricket, so your turn to bat before you get bowled out is called an innings.
a good inning. Okay, okay, yeah, yeah.
And so when somebody dies in an advanced age, they
Yeah.
say he had a good innings,
Yeah.
nine, whatever.
Yeah.
And so the illusion
Yeah.
has had a good innings.
It's a good innings. Yeah. That's a good one. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you tried to write any poetry?
About since
Yeah,
we
yeah,
last.
yeah.
No, I haven't really.
Really? Oh,
Um,
wow.
no, I've just been sort of, what have I been doing? Wandering around.
Yeah.
Uh,
Walking around, looking at this, it's like having a new sight, right? It's like having new eyeglasses. If I don't know if you've worn glasses before. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
no, absolutely. It's having a completely different. I
yeah.
don't know. I mean,
It's the same, but it's everything's different, isn't it?
yeah, and
Yeah, same and
it
different.
feels like it's the more the sort of more opportunity provided for it to express itself, the more it takes,
Yeah,
in the sense that if you want to rush around, then obviously it's going to be slightly different. But if you want to
yeah,
take 5 minutes and just sit there, it's like, oh wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny, right? Because I was not really an outdoorsy person um for 40 plus years, right? So
Yeah.
and here I am in the suburbs, in which is about 20 minutes away from the downtown Toronto, 30 minutes from the downtown Toronto, and nobody wants to be here because it's a suburb, right?
Mm.
um Yet, you know what, I walk every morning and I don't see a suburb. I see like paradise, like, with beautiful trees and that everybody overlooks, right? There's this beautiful nature here, big kind of like trails and everything, and little lakes. It's
Mm.
coyotes and foxes showing up everywhere.
Wow.
It's phenomenal, right? Um and it always happened that way for this character, right? Like I was, for example, in a beautiful island, and for quite a while in the island, I just either meditated, in the morning, for hours, or was hungover from my woe is me, kind of like I'm not enlightened yet, so I'll just drink myself silly. I was
I'll become a Hemingway.
Yes, yes, yes. Or you know what? There's a few characters, that have seemingly woken up from suffering and everything. So I'm like, if my practice is not going to do it for me, I'll do the suffering route, right? So one of them has to work, kind of thing. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, so since then, right? So I saw that place again, and I was like, what the hell? There's like eagles everywhere. There's orca whales, right? There's bears, like paradise. And there's like blueberries, and raspberries along the paths, it's just organic stuff, right? I was like, what the hell? I saw it, but I didn't pay attention to it. It's kind of like when you run, right? You're like, and then when you see this patch of like flowers, right, that you've never seen before. Or today it's kind of funny, right? Because I've walked this path many times, and I don't know why I didn't see it. Um, um, looked at this tree and I was like, and it's a tree house. There's this wonderfully crafted, constructed tree house. And I was mesmerized by it, not by nature, but even the construct of, like, how come I didn't see this?
Mm.
Even when there's just this aliveness walking every morning, right? There's always something new. It's phenomenal. Um, well, before I was just so stuck here, right? It's almost like I'm like a teenager that wears dark glasses in a sunny day, with my hoodie on and going all emo and stuff. Um,
Mm.
Now there's this nature lover, like outdoors, kind of like, like I walk so much now. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
I'll go to the park.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Tell you
yeah.
what we've got here, of course, is the River Thames,
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're,
which
in a
is
nice area too, right? So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So I can get to the river and to the park. So it's there's which I do quite a bit, but I haven't been doing recently. So yeah,
Yeah.
take my new glasses to the park.
That's right. It's called clarity. It's your prescription clarity, prescription lens without words. Um, but yeah, it's beautiful, right? Because I was so trapped, in there were days I could not get up because I was so depressed, and or I would have anxiety, so I could never see the world, right? Because I was so imprisoned by my thoughts and my feelings and all that kind of stuff, right? And
Mm,
now it's like, or trying to get up in the morning because I was like, I don't want to, face the world, right? So,
mm,
and there were even times that I could not even take care of my dog anymore. That's how bad it got. Like my dog stayed with
yeah,
my
yeah.
brother. Yeah, it was so bad. Now I have a dog. You know what? I'm as excited as her to see this, right? I'm like, okay,
Mm,
let's go. It's nothing special, but but it's the ordinary. Like, people were like, how could you get excited with walking in the morning? I'm like, it's a brand new day, apparently, right? There's the rays of many hues of colors. I usually walk in the golden hour, right? So I
mm,
always I time it so that midway through it, the golden hour comes with the darkness, and then the light comes and the golden hues and the sun
mm,
and everything,
mm.
right? So I'm excited about the eclipse that's coming here in Toronto. There's an
All
eclipse
right.
coming up. Yeah, I think the next one, this is one of those ones in a lifetime,
Like a full
eclipses that,
eclipse.
yeah, yeah, full eclipse. Yeah. Some people
Wow.
are coming here, yeah, to see it. Yeah.
When is it?
April 7th is coming up.
Wow,
Or
exciting.
April something, 6 or 7, I can't remember.
Yeah, of course, the last one here, I think last serious one was around 2000-ish.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, being the United Kingdom, you know, it was too cloudy for anyone to see. But yeah, it
What's
was a
that song? A foggy day in London town.
yeah, it's been very, very grey in London. Um, but yeah, spring is coming.
Yeah, glorious spring. Yeah, it's beautiful to walk. This is great. It's like having a new pair of visions glasses, right? Seeing spring anew. Perfect,
Mm,
right? It's quite it never gets boring. I don't know. It never gets boring, right? Because um I don't even like I used to kind of like it's raining, but even when it's raining, there's something new about that too, right? Like for example, I was walking and it was so gray, and I was like this shade of gray actually so stark, right? It makes
yeah.
everything look really sharp and the colors pop out, right? I was like, what the hell? I've never seen even the grayest day, right? There's just some wonder to it, right? Because
Oh yeah.
you've always kind of like, labeled as gray day, like, oh, I don't want to go out, it's gray outside. But or even when all of the leaves are gone, right? The silhouette of the tree and all of those branches, like
Mm.
okay, this I'm seeing this as with an artist's eye, basically, right? It's an art now.
Mm,
Before I was blind to it. I was blind to it all.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what they say, filthy weather if
Yeah,
it's raining,
filthy weather. Yeah.
filthy weather, or
Yeah.
it's terrible, horrible weather today.
Horrible weather. Yeah, yeah.
Really bad weather,
Yeah.
and you're like,
Yeah.
what's the great? That's the one that the Nordic people say. I think I don't know which, but it's like there's no such thing as bad weather. There's only bad clothes.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
But then the best place to be in bad weather is in the sea, isn't it? Really, or bad weather. I don't know. I mean,
That's
I
right.
don't.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
It's
like
but the
there's just
British complain about the weather.
yeah, there's just magic, magic everywhere. Like my one time I took my puppy and she discovered puddles. If you've
Right.
ever seen a puppy discover a puddle, and and she was just like jumping around it, right? She's never experienced rain before in puddle, right? And here I was like playing with her. So we came out like muddy and dirty and everything, but it was one of the most beautiful rainy days, right? That kind
Mm.
of thing, because I'm not trapped anymore for what this should be or how it could be and everything. It's just what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when I see my puppy, like I would have said that, oh, let's not go to walk. It's raining outside. It's quite dreary, right? But my puppy's still excited, like, and I forgot that she's never seen rain before. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna go, to the rain. So I had their little cute like raincoat, on and everything. She looked like that little kid from It, that horror movie, the red raincoat. But she didn't like it, so she kept on wriggling out of it, right? And um,
What sort of puppy is she?
Cocker Spaniel.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know I'm doing this thing this year called Good Woof? And
Oh,
like here,
cool.
there's a famous racing circuit
Oh,
called
cool.
Goodwood, and they have all these vintage cars and whatever. And this year they're doing a dog festival,
Oh,
and they did it
cool.
last, and it has a dog disco and a
No way.
dog tarot reading. It has dog speed trials, dog reiki, dog like all these kind of crazy competitions. There's thousands and thousands of dogs at this thing,
No way.
and just watching the dogs aware of each other.
Yeah.
Obviously, all of their senses are just going like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But the second day, they're all exhausted because they just could they're like, this is a town for dogs, and
Yeah.
they start with like a parade of this year. It's the Labrador they're focusing on, so they've got like 250 Labradors are going to go and parade up and
Oh,
down.
wow.
And then they have like otter hounds. I tell you what, amazing dog I saw there last year, which was a borzoi.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry. How does it look like?
They're
I
like
think, yeah,
classical Russian
yeah,
kind of hound,
yeah,
astonishing looking things. And I mean, just mind blowing, really. All
yeah.
these different dogs, and all the people are dog people, of course, so they all talk
Oh,
to
that
each other.
would be so great. Yeah. My dog goes to my brother's house, right? And my brother's a big house. And then my brother has a dog. My puppy just goes completely ballistic, right? She just
Right? Yeah,
goes,
yeah.
imagine her in a place with thousands of dogs, right? So she just loses it, right? And by the time, by the time we're going home, she's completely exhausted. She doesn't even
Yeah,
move,
yeah,
right? She's just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
dead. Like imagine taking her there, like probably 2 hours and she's done, right? Because she'll just be like,
Yeah. Second day, there's just all these dogs on the floor,
oh
just
wow.
lying there going, oh my God, it's just too much. It's too much. I've had too much fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh. And that's what and if you my first this is just a story, my first seemingly like kundalini giant awakening or whatever you might call it. I was my dog, and I was just really watching my dog. I was in a street where there was a lot of addictions. I wanted to see it with compassion or anything, right? But my dog doesn't even know what compassion is, just licked everybody. It doesn't matter if someone's shooting up heroin. And I think that's somehow it clicked. I didn't understand it. And then I was just so everything is God at one point, and I was hugging everybody, and um so yeah, so you know what, the dog was actually the best teacher, the best guru. and 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 it was just beautiful just to see, that there's no judgments whatsoever, and um
mm.
just licking everybody and bringing joy to everybody. And yeah, that was my start of my spiritual teaching. Unfortunately, I turned it into my stuff.
Oh, right. So you had
Yeah,
your sort of your sort of bang experience, and that
yeah,
that went straight
yeah.
into ego.
That's right. Well, not really in the beginning, right? In the beginning, it was more of I was just so happy. I didn't know what to make of it. And I said that, well, since this, and then the ego came in, I guess, and since this happened in a street where there's a lot of people that are suffering, why didn't I open up a center, you know where people can go
Mhm.
for free. So there were a lot of good intentions in there, right? And unfortunately, you know what, when crisis happened, like, you know, my mom and, you know, my ex at that time, you know, separating, I did not know how to deal with it. I thought I had to transmute it into peace and all that kind of stuff, right? So
Yeah,
like, so because that's what I see, you know what I'm saying, from the idea, you know, the image of enlightenment, that, you know, everyone's dressed up in a robe and
yeah.
and serene, and, you know,
Got to
like,
get the clothes, man.
gotta get the. I was working. I had like multiple mala beads. I had mala beads on my wrist. I smelled like champa. You know what I'm saying? I was doing the role. You know, it was,
Surrounded by an entourage.
no, 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 no. But
Uh,
there was a there
solo,
was
solo, lonely saint.
solo, but, you know, people wanted to be in your orbit, basically, right? So they do circle you.
Mm,
There were a lot of people that were trying to be teachers as well, right? So they tried to ask mentorship and that kind of stuff like that. Luckily,
yeah.
at that point, my mentors instilled this really strict rule: no sleeping with your students, kind of thing. And I also passed that to people that I was teaching: don't sleep with anyone, um, that kind of
Yeah, that
thing.
doesn't tend to go well for people, does it really?
No, no, no. But
Doesn't tend to go well anyway.
I was graduating teachers as well, right? So I would teach them not to sleep. So I had a good guidance from the mentor. But yeah, you know, it's a brahmacharya, right? In the Eastern philosophy tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought brahmacharya quite well and everything, but it was still a lot of lack. You know, it was just, you know,
Mm.
it was just another. It became a me thing. It became my teaching. It became my philosophy.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. And
that's always the same.
when I saw that it was all, you know, all a sham, right? So I did not know how to function anymore. So I started falling apart as a teacher. Did a lot of wrongs, you know what I'm saying, but not sleeping with
Mm.
students. Uh, a lot of things that was just that I, of course, was shame and guilt followed right after, right? So I was in bed for 2 years crying about it every night. I'm like, oh, I've hurt my community, that kind of stuff. Oh,
So
yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to change locations as there's
Okay, I have to go soon anyway too. The
oh,
sun is coming.
okay. Yeah, yeah. Um,
That's a great house that you have there.
yeah, it's quite a place.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Um, that's that's not where I live. I live in here. No,
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, it's nice too. Yeah. Wow. Massive place.
it's a squash court.
Yeah.
It's a squash court.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Just converted. Yeah. So anyway, but not for much longer.
Yeah.
So you've got to go. When do you think we should talk again? Sometime
We
soon.
should talk again soon. Yeah. Like, um, usually what happens, I'm gonna stop the recording here.